Are you planning your next camping trip? Let's go over the difference between campgrounds and backcountry camping so you can decide which one is right for you. Hey y'all, I'm Juliana, and today I want to be your travel guide. And if you like these type of videos, you already know what to do. But let's get into the video. Our last national park trip was in September of 2024, where we went to Yosemite, Sequoia, and Kings Canyon National Park. But if you've been following us for a little while, you already knew this. We will start talking about campgrounds, which are the most well-known ways to stay at a national park, if not for hotels, motels, or lodges inside the national parks. Let's start with the cons because I know that's what you hear the most. Campgrounds tend to cost way more than dispersed camping. Our campground at North Pines in the Yosemite Valley cost $36. And when you see the cost for a backcountry permit and all of those costs, you will understand the difference. But if you're traveling on a budget, that is something to consider. Another downside of the campgrounds is that they are extremely crowded. They have a higher limit on how many people can stay at each campsite, and every single campsite is very close to one another, which might seem great, but for us, it was a complete nightmare. And I'm not even joking. Most people that were staying on the campgrounds were either running on no sleep, or they didn't have the same drive as us to wake up early and try to enjoy most of our day while the sun was still out. I do not understand. So get ready to hear people's conversations, their music, dogs barking, cars coming and going, and everything because there's 100 strangers around you within 100 feet. With a note, it's obvious that you don't really have any privacy. Everywhere you look at, there's a stranger and you're looking at them and they're looking at you. So if you like that, that's awesome, but it was not our cup of tea. Now let's talk about the good things. Most campgrounds are extremely easy to find. You can drive up there with your own car. There are normally signs guiding you to it, and best of all, you can find it on a map. You also know from the start which campsite you're gonna have for the night, and everything is relatively easy. Campgrounds are usually extremely close to the main areas of the park. Those can be trails, museums, restaurants, and more. But that essentially puts you in the middle of everything. Another great thing about campgrounds is that they have toilets. Sometimes they have flushing toilets, and sometimes they have showers. So after a few days in the wilderness, it might be a good call to go in and take a shower, especially if you're not traveling alone. They will thank you later. At campgrounds, you also find a picnic table where you can eat your meals, you can sit and relax, you can do whatever you would do at a picnic table, honestly. I said that having too many people around you is not the best thing, but it is really good if you're traveling by yourself, if you have anxiety about camping for the first time and you're alone, or just you're nervous about camping in general, and you have a lot of people around you to help you out most of the time. Most people around you are going to be willing to help wherever you need. If you forgot something specific, a lighter, or I don't know, but they are going to try to help you out most of the time. So that's a little comforting, especially if it's your first trip or you just don't really like traveling alone. If you were traveling with a large group, campgrounds are going to be really cheap, and you can split the amount of the campground along with all the group, and it's going to cost a penny for each person of the group. But if you were traveling solo or a couple, 2 people, 3 people, it's going to be a little more pricey. One thing that I loved about the campgrounds that we didn't really get to use on our last trip were the fire pits. They were awesome, and next time when we go camping, if we end up at a campground, I really want to have the classic experience camping, like roasting marshmallows, listening to the sound of nature, and the occasional TikTok song from your neighbor. But I really wanted to do that, so maybe next time. But it's really cool that they have that. Getting access to a campground is also easier because you don't need a permit like you do for the backcountry. That's why most people turn to campgrounds when they go to national parks. It's just less of a hassle. Now that we covered campgrounds, let's talk about dispersed camping or backcountry. We will also start with the cons, and number 1 is having no bathrooms. Each park and trails have their own rules, so make sure that you ask the ranger when you pick up your backcountry permit what are those rules, where you can do your business, how far you need to be from the river, or all those questions. They know everything, and when you get your permit, it says on the paper as well, so make sure that you pay attention to that. I will say that this makes your experience so much more intense. I have never done my business in the wilderness. I'm a city girl, so that was pretty new for me. So if that's not really your cup of tea, and I know I'm mainly speaking with the ladies right now because, you know, the man can figure their way out. If that's not your cup of tea, maybe I would just go to a campground because it's way different. It's challenging at some points. Finding a spot to place your tent might be a little bit difficult because they don't have the pre-made flat areas for you to place them. But there are a few spots that you can walk around and see that enough people have been there and the area is a little flatter than all the areas around you. So you can choose to just put your tent there, or you can find a brand new area that has been untouched, but those are kind of like difficult to put your tent in. Normally when you see a more flat area, it's where people just figured out as the best way to camp. But when we camped there, we found one of those areas and Trey was overthinking the whole time. He was thinking that one of the trees that was right next to our tent was gonna fall on us because the tree was dead, and he kept pushing the tree and he was overthinking the whole night, thinking that we were gonna be by a tree, but we weren't. We're fine, we're here. Anyways, just be careful with the trees, I guess. But it's good to be aware of your surroundings when you pick a spot, just so you know that you're safe when you're gonna be sleeping. Your campsite is probably gonna be very far away from your car and any other people. So if you're traveling solo, make sure you have a Garmin or a satellite phone just so you can get help from someone from outside, because no one is going to be around to help you out unless a bear wants to help out, but we don't want that. So make sure you have one of those so you can reach out for someone in case you need it. Speaking of bears, backcountry can be very intimidating, especially for beginners. I am guilty of that. Every little sound sounds so much louder when you are in the middle of nowhere and there's no one around you. And every time I would think it's a bear. Just be aware of your surroundings. It might be a little more challenging, especially if you're a beginner. Just be aware of that as well. Dispersed camping can be very difficult to get to, especially because you have to hike quite a bit before you get to the areas where dispersed camping is permitted. So be aware of that, and especially that you're gonna be carrying a very heavy backpack, which can be very challenging depending on which trail you're picking to go. Now we're getting to the best parts of the backcountry and the dispersed camping, which I am gonna have a blast talking about those. The environment was so quiet and so peaceful. I could hear the birds, the leaves falling from the trees, the wind, the river, everything, and it was so nice. And there was no light pollution or sound pollution to distract me from the nature. It just felt like nature was embracing me throughout the whole hike, and while I was just making my meals and getting ready for bed, it was just a surreal experience. It was really nice. There's also not gonna be anyone around you, which is gonna give you so much privacy. If you're one of those that wants to blast the speakers and listen to TikTok songs or any type of music while you're hiking, feel free. I am more of the type that just sits in the silence of nature and like maybe have a chat with Trey or whatever, but I just enjoy the nature itself. But you can do whatever you want because there's no one around you. It's free. So I love that part. You get so connected with nature. I think the busy parts of the park might distract you a bit from focusing on the nature and everything around you. But when you're in the backcountry, you don't have those distractions. So everything you have to do is focus on the nature. So it just feels awesome. Dispersed camping also helps you out to discover new areas of the park that you will not be able to get to if you're not camping along that trail, which is what we did in Yosemite. We did a couple trails that we did the backcountry because we weren't able to do the whole trail and come back in a day. So we had to stay overnight, which was backcountry permits are also very cheap compared to the campgrounds. Remember that our campground cost $36? Our backcountry permit costs $20. So it's almost half the price, which is really nice, especially if you're a smaller group. The views are also amazing, and you get to pick the area that you're gonna camp. and where you're gonna wake up in the next morning and the view that you're gonna see first thing in the morning. So that's an amazing experience. And it's a way bigger area for you to pick where you're gonna camp compared to a campsite where they limit you to a very small area, which is the number of the campsite that you're in. In the backcountry, you can set up your camp anywhere you want to, following the rules of the trail. Just ask the ranger any questions you have and where you can set up the camp as you go on the trail. Now, if you want to see more of our experience in each of these situations in the campsite or on the backcountry, I'll link my national park playlist right here so you can see all of those videos. It was great hanging out with you guys today, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye!